One last question, the most important question of all. How much do you get to play Smash Brothers still? Do you get on six very often?
Oh man, I competed at MomoCon a few months ago.
Okay.
Was not a strong performance out of me. I think I went 2-2, which I was like, okay, that's fine enough for the day.
On today's Director Spotlight, we welcome in Justin Ellis, known as Director Purple in the world of esports. Justin's contributions to the collegiate esports space include building, leading, and growing the esports club program at Quinnipiac University. He has now officially been named the Director of Esports at Huntingdon College in Montgomery, Alabama. Justin, welcome in to this Stay Plugged In Director Spotlight.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man. I'm very excited about the opportunities I've had over the past few years, and I'm excited to share those experiences with everyone else today.
Tell me a little bit about your history, how you got into esports.
Yeah, 100%. So when I was a freshman in high school, I used to be a marching band kid. So I was hanging out with a lot of kids on the drum line back then. And most of them were super into Smash Brothers. I was hanging out with them. And one day they were like, hey, we're going to Smash tournaments. And I had never known that competitive esports existed. I was like, what? I can go somewhere and play Smash. So I eventually couldn't convince my parents. So the first time I went, I convinced my grandparents to take me to my first Smash event. Was in a coffee house, probably the quarter of the size of a Starbucks, with 75 people playing Smash. And I was absolutely enthralled by it from that moment on. I got into it a ton. I started competing. I got to travel to a bunch of events. I was living in Atlanta at that point, so I got to go to MomoCon and DreamHack. I got to travel out of state to some events as well. Eventually, I ended up starting an esports club at my high school. Back then, there weren't any of the organized high school leagues like Play Versus that there are now. So I used to run a bit of a Smash tournament series out of our high school in the Georgia area. And then it grew really big. I absolutely loved doing it and raising money for charity through that. And I ended up going to college out of state to a school that didn't have really an esports program at that point, in Quinnipiac University. And my second year there, I was approached about starting a Super Smash Brothers team. And I basically had 3 other guys that were my close friends, and I was like, hey, let's compete in Smash. Let's see what we can do. It could be a fun activity for us to do outside of just playing local tournaments. And in our first semester, we got runner-ups for the ECAC Smash title. And we did that for 2 semesters in a row before COVID hit, and things really shut down for a tiny bit. And then on the other side of that, Quinnipiac University was looking to turn their program from just a club into a club sport. They were just adding club sports back to campus as a whole, and esports was in their second tier of adding back. And I originally wasn't sure if I wanted to do it. It was my senior year of college, but I took the opportunity, and we were super excited to get started, and it just kind of grew from there. Quinnipiac quickly after that let me lead a campaign in getting an esports facility built on that campus. So we got to contribute to making an esports facility space there. We got to compete in the MAC conference along with the EGF. The MAC conference, we had 2 regular season championships while I was there, as well as a MAC conference championship, and did pretty well in the EGF and got to compete in the CECC. And even after this past year, students that I left the program with, they had championships in Smash and Valorant this year, both of which went to compete in CECC in Arlington. And while they were continuing onward, I got my bachelor's degree in English. I got a master's degree in education. Originally was going to go be a secondary teacher, but was really passionate about wanting to see if I could do something in the esports realm. So I started looking at opportunities and got a few opportunities, but ultimately Huntingdon was somewhere that was really exciting because they wanted to build out a large facility space. They wanted to be offering scholarships as a new program. They were in an area in Alabama that I felt like was underrepresented in the esports realm.
Sure.
And all of that really provided really good opportunities for us to take off. And this past year, I've been here basically building out the facility space we have here now, bringing in now a roster of 29 for our inaugural season that will probably be fielding around 10 games. So some of those students are even going to multi-game out of their interests. And we're very excited to start competing in primarily the NECC, the ECAC, and doing a tiny bit of NACE as well.
That's exciting stuff. Number one, we'll get into Huntingdon 20 because I love what you guys have done, and it's so much over a short time period. So would love to hear more about that. Let's hop back into your time at Quinnipiac. Obviously, building that club program. What were some of the? Was it pretty natural for you, or was it more just like, oh my goodness, I feel like I'm getting thrown in the fire with all the things I'm responsible for here?
Yeah, so when I got to the actual club sport program side, it was definitely a bit of a different breed for me, just because it was my first time doing anything that was esports and related very closely to the athletics side of things. Because even though it was a club sport, we still had to get physicals for all of our players. All of our players did like a concussion test, so they knew the standard like layout and flat line for concussion protocol, and doing stuff like that. And all of a sudden now having to like go through fighting for a budget with other club programs. There were some new aspects to it that I wasn't as familiar with. I mean, when we were originally just part of our gaming club at the school, it was very much just, students were gonna have to pay their own way for everything, basically. Outside of paying to be part of the ECAC, we had to pay for jerseys or anything like that. So there's a lot more logistical value. And then on top of that, there's a lot more travel opportunity because being part of the MAC, they have a championship in Atlantic City each spring. And that wasn't something that there weren't really many LAN events in the ECAC back then. I think they had their thing at HV GamerCon each year. But at that point, we weren't traveling to any events. So now you're dealing with the travel logistics, you're dealing with the monetary logistics. You're dealing with a lot more players because we expanded. Back then, when we were still a club, we were basically League of Legends, Smash Brothers, and Hearthstone. And Smash Brothers was really good. Hearthstone had won some ECAC championships, and League was there as well. But we ended up expanding and turning it into basically League, Smash, Overwatch, Valorant, and Rocket League, basically within 2 weeks, because I wasn't informed we were a club sport till I had set foot on campus 2 weeks into the semester. And to be ready for a fall season, we had like 2 weeks to get ready for it. So it was a very quick turnaround on getting all of that done within that 2 week time period. So it was a rush, but we got there eventually.
No doubt. So, I mean, takes a lot in a short window of time, which means, if we transfer over to Huntingdon College and talk about that a little bit, I mean, you've accomplished a whole lot, including, I think it says on your page, 31 players or 31 person program. So that's a lot of individuals that you have to bring on in a short period of time. Plus, I mean, there's so much else going on. How is it that you're able to manage and acquire and find all these players?
Yeah, well, I think the first thing that's really played into that was just Huntington's willingness to take a year to bring me in and build out the program to start. And, not like immediately jump in the competition. We had talked about like if we find a lot of students on campus, maybe we're doing a spring 2023 at the very earliest. But ultimately we were like, hey, let's just take the whole year. Let's make sure the facility is set up correct. And let's make sure that we're working very hard to find students that are going to fit the program, who are on campus, and fit the program who are off campus. We're a school that's very set up, and everyone who comes in here really is already signed up in something before they hit the school ground, whether that's one of our 21D3 sports, esports, band, cheer, dance. Most students are coming here because there's something that Huntington reached out for them on. I think it's about, it's close to 90% of our students now are involved in something prior to ever stepping foot on campus. So that's a really big part of what we wanted to do. So we were really reaching out to just about everywhere. I mean, when you have the opportunity to not run a team and do the recruiting and do the building, it allows a lot more opportunities. I mean, I would say that I talked to, on a call like this, I probably talked to about 1,800 students in the course of a year.
Wow.
Yes, it was a large amount, and every conversation, I can remember the ones who, were like very quick and off about it, but I remember the ones too who were very into it and very invested and asked questions. And it all really, stuck out to me. So every single student I had that unique conversation with, that was like very big to me to have those opportunities to do and be able to have those and maybe be deeper in my conversations than I would have been if I was simply in the middle of a season. So that allowed me a lot more opportunities to meet with a lot more students, both local and meeting with coaches in the state of Alabama and surrounding states, but also students from around the country. We have students here from 9 different states this fall, and we're definitely one of the more diverse location-wise teams on the Huntingdon campus. So it's awesome to be able to bring in students from so many different states and so many different backgrounds to be under this one team, because everyone's played a video game at some point or another. So it's just a matter of finding, the people who want to come in and invest their time and, building out those skills in a program like this.
Yeah, I feel like not a lot of people understand that that's actually a very strong approach. In fact, it might be required. In fact, I would argue that it will be required in the future to reach out to multiple locations, to find players from just about all over the country. I mean, when we talk about video games and esports in general, it's all about the ability to go virtual, to cross boundaries, to be non-local to some degree. And plus talking with 1,800 plus students around that area, right, is also required too, because you want to find the right fits. And I think you've learned a lot over the time that you've spent there, which is super cool. Any other lessons that you may have learned from your first experience, from your first go around from Quinnipiac that you could share with us?
Yeah, I mean, from my experience with Quinnipiac, as either a student or like someone in charge of a program, which one are you thinking more so?
We could say more of being in charge of the program itself.
Yeah. Well, while being in charge of the program at Quinnipiac, I think it's really just about asking and taking the risk of asking. I think a lot of people can sit in a bit of complacency, for lack of a better word, where, if you feel like you have enough to get by, I feel like a lot of times it's hard to really know what to ask for, what to push for. Yeah. So I think something I learned was just always ask. The worst someone can say is no, and have to explain a reason why they said no. And a lot of times if you hear someone give a reason they say no, you can usually start backing that up with your own knowledge, your own information to support that. The amount of times that I've used outside data when someone has said no to me 3 times, and every time I come back with data to prove a point, I did that so much at my first university that I was working with that it really just helped push forward. So always asking admin and pushing for, hey, we need the budget to go and do this additional travel event, or we need to do this with our esports facility space we're building, or we need to start talking about what we can do on the academic side of the esports program and what value we can add there. While I was there, they started teaching esports management classes. They actually had a summer esports management class that was actually even taught by someone who works at Nerd Street. They even had opportunities that they're working toward with a talent management major with a esports specialization over there that I helped talk a bit through. They also were working toward an esports journalism minor prior to me leaving that they were working through. So they were working through so many ways of academic integration, and they were even talking bigger picture about how I realized that I was getting opportunities to talk with higher admins. So I got to talk with like the chief student experience officer, and I got to talk to some people in charge of the financials on that end. And they were basically like, well, what can we do then to bring other people to the campus? Like, can we host a convention here for something? What can we do with, maybe our engineering computer science programs? Maybe they can do something here involved with esports. Obviously I talked about journalism at Huntingdon. We're talking about, what can our sports management students do with that, and do with esports? What can our business majors do? What can our English majors do? Like, every major has ways into esports on an academic end. And that's something that I really think is going to be a big push over the next few years, is how to get people involved in esports who aren't just esports players, in the sake that, there's a large population of people on every campus that has esports that aren't impacted by esports. It's there and it helps people, but you can start talking about all these academic settings, like in a business 101 class or an English 101 or a journalism 101. Esports can have very easy overlap into so many different academic backings and academic areas that I really want to see a push that, esports can obviously have its own classes, but I love the idea of, and the conversations I was having with people in academics, both at Quinnipiac and Huntingdon, of standard academic classes having an esports factor into it. whether that's like a graphic design class having esports graphic design, specialization areas, or whether that's, you're doing a business class and you're talking about what it takes to run a facility on a month-to-month basis or something like that from a business and financial end. Those are the things that I was starting to work on and working toward, and that I'm working toward right now that I think are very unique and very different, and something we're going to see a lot more in both the collegiate and hopefully the high school landscape even too in the next few years.
Definitely. And I can tell that you're excited to build something at Huntingdon as well. It's very clear. And a big reason why is just what you've been able to accomplish in this short amount of time. That being said, can you describe some of the emotions that might be hitting you now that you had to say goodbye to Quinnipiac? Or I'm sure you're still in contact with some of the individuals.
Yeah. So it's been about a year since I was there now, but when I was at CCC and I was doing recruiting there with Stay Plugged In through their event they were hosting in Arlington that same weekend, I got an opportunity to meet some of my players. I got an opportunity to meet the old VP of Campus and Rec over there and interact with them. And, it was great to see them again. I think, I got to the point where it was time to move on though and, have this environment, and I'm
Sure.
still close with all of them. So, I'm I love them. I miss them. But it's very exciting to be, where I am now and have the opportunity to even have, a higher stake and higher involvement at this level outside of what I was having over there. And, it's great to, just in the past, our students moved in on last week. So it's been really nice to, have my students now on campus and using our facility space and using our arena. And it's been great to see everyone interacting in person too. So I think there's a lot of emotions there of just excitement and kind of awe that, all these people that for the most part, when I was talking to them, I was meeting them one-on-one in our space, to now have them all interacting with each other, I think is a very sweet moment to see for sure, to have all these students finally coming together outside of just a Discord chat.
No doubt. Well, let's talk about it then. It was just announced in December that Drum Theater on campus is going to be the house for esports for you all. So talk about what goes into a project like this, because I know that you mentioned as part of the studies, or at least trying to include into studies, talk about what it takes to run a facility or build a facility. I mean, there's got to be a lot of moving parts, right? With working with the college, acquiring funding, installing everything. Briefly talk about what goes on to build something like this.
Yeah, 100%. And when we were coming in and getting ready to, when I was interviewing here, we had actually already talked about Drum Theater as that potential space. So even months prior to the actual announcement, we were already leaning toward using this space. And, always choosing a space on campus can be complicated. You're always trying not to touch on people's toes. But honestly, Huntingdon was very embracing, and the community was very embracing of this space and the converting that would go into it to make it into an esports hub on campus and make it that next, sport on campus. And everyone's really great about that. And obviously there's a lot of conversations about, what it's going to cost, what's going to go into the space, how are we going to make it happen. We actually brought in an outside consulting group to actually come in that specializes with esports arenas to actually come in and discuss our space, look through it themselves. Because I can give my input as much as they want, but it's always great to have multiple people in that area talking about it, because at the time I was really the only esports guy who was saying this is what we need. So I think it was confirming to first bring in a couple more esports heads just to talk about the space with our higher admin. And then quickly after that, after Thanksgiving break, we basically knew what we wanted to do. We had talked to some architects. We had an idea. We had a vision off of another place we had seen before. And we went right into it, and we started construction just after Thanksgiving break. We initially we wanted to build a lower stage so that we didn't have all of our PCs on the hardwood floor that's been here for a while. We wanted to have a carpeted surface for our students for the lower space in our arena. And then we wanted to have our stage as kind of the main competition area. We brought in a 135-inch projector, an amazing, projector screen, an amazing setup that we had there. And during this process too, we were also thinking about what furniture we want in the space, what PCs do we want in the space. I probably talked to 8 different computer providers / builders and kind of talked through pricing and the bang for the buck value kind of thing, and talking about, what kind of computers and PCs do we want in this space that's really going to set us apart and make us different. We went with RTX 3080 graphics cards, 240 hertz monitors, 32 gigabyte RAM, 2 terabyte solid state drive, i7s, and then we even, just due to circumstances, ended up with 6 RTX 4080s actually in our space. Yeah, so we ended up with some really good space there. And then you talk about other stuff, like obviously this wasn't like a computer lab before, so you got to work through wiring, you got to work through getting TVs installed, getting our consoles in here, all of that good stuff. And then you're always thinking about internet too on top of that, what the internet's going to be like in this space. And we were fortunate enough to be able to get Huntingdon set up in this area with a 1 gigabyte pipeline into campus over here. And we're actually this month adding a 2nd gigabyte to campus on this side. So we're actually going to be a 2 gigabyte pipeline specifically over in the esports arena. And I think that's something that Huntingdon, one of the reasons I came here is that they've been very good about things like tech and internet. The rest of campus is like 500 gigabyte upload, 500 gigabyte download outside of this space, which from college campuses I've been on, that's superb to what I've seen most places. So our IT department is no joke around here in terms of, what they accomplish. So they've been super helpful throughout the process. And like, we definitely wouldn't be where we are without our IT department. So coordinating with them and coordinating with the business department and coordinating with the athletics department, there's a lot of cooks in the kitchen, but ultimately, it makes a great product when everyone's on the same page and is actually positively working toward this.
I mean, it looks absolutely beautiful. The space does. So yeah, it takes definitely a lot of hands to make something so special. So let's talk a little bit about actually using that equipment to its fullest potential as well, because I know back with Quinnipiac as well, you mentioned winning the MAAC championship, qualifying for CECC. In your mind, what are some of the things or qualities that you see in players, qualities that you like to see in your team that pushes a program to these heights?
Yeah, I think for me, I've always, and I've talked about this before with a couple other things to stay plugged in too, is that I'm always looking at people who are willing to learn and develop, because for me, I think looking at rank first doesn't tell the whole story of any student or any player, because at the same time, like I said, I'm looking for people who are going to fit the campus, fit the experience, people who are going to enjoy the campus and experience here as well. I don't want to tell a student to come here for esports and them not going to be enjoying what the campus has to offer. So being able to have a conversation, and the questions I usually ask are, what's your background in gaming in general? When did you first start playing video games? What got you into esports? What has you interested in possibly doing in collegiate? I think the things that, I really look for are people who are motivated by esports, but also people who understand, like, yes, esports could be your future career and you could definitely do it, but also people who understand that collegiate esports, especially at Huntingdon, is something that adds on to the value of your education, while also, thanks to our scholarships, supplementing a portion of the cost. So us, it's really about making a big push to show all of this benefit and finding students who want to take a part of all of this benefit, and that really are just going to fit well with the idea that we are an academic first institution, but esports, we're here to play hard and we're here to succeed. I mean, we have quite a few GCs for Rocket League here that are here. We have some GM1 Overwatch players. We have a pretty good league team, and we have, like I said, about 9 to 10 teams that we'll be fielding this fall. So we have a pretty large variety of just about, every background of student you could think of, just because, we're really looking for students who are willing to learn and willing to improve. I don't need to only talk to Immortal or Ascendant or Radiant Valorant players. I'm willing to talk to, Valorant players who maybe worked super hard in school and just love Valorant and have played really well in Valorant, but just haven't got to that rank yet because they haven't had a set aside time to do so. Despite, the great advances that have been made in the scholastic landscape, there's so many strong players out there who just don't have esports at their school, or don't have, the equipment in their home and internet in their home to play or compete in any kind of video game tournaments. So it's about finding players that aren't just competing well, but students who are just passionate about what they do. And, seeing my students in person and interacting with each other, this group's passionate, and that's something that, makes me very excited to know that I brought in a group that really does have that passion.
That is absolutely incredible. And it's been awesome chatting with you. One last question, the most important question of all: how much do you get to play Smash Brothers still? Do you get on sticks very often?
Oh man, I competed at MomoCon a few months ago.
Okay.
was not a strong performance out of me. I think I went 2-2, which I was like, okay, that's fine enough for the day.
All right.
But nowadays, I don't compete a lot. I am very fortunate. We have an amazing TO, Katie Linkstain, who actually holds a Smash Local 7 minutes from our campus.
All right.
So she hosts those, and we're actually having our first major in Montgomery, Alabama in December called Santa Paws, that we're bringing in top 12 top 100 Smash players are going to be in the first major in Alabama down here in December that I'm sure I'll have some of my players at too. So I have opportunities to play. You might see me bring out the sticks again when Santa Paws comes around, but it's I find my time here and there. I play way more Fortnite now in my passing time, which is an addiction of its own.
I love it. Well, again, we appreciate you coming out, Justin, and speaking with us here at Stay Plugged In and the Director's Spotlight, and hopefully we'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, absolutely. Sounds good. Have a good one.